So I'm sitting here on my porch. It's a beautiful day. That's the church I go to over there. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. The pastor's wife and his son, who's like, I don't know, I think he's like 3, 4 years old. They're over there singing. You might be able to hear that. I'm just sitting out here and I'm thinking, I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube that people do about the things they carry. They call them EDCs, everyday carries. This is not. I don't. I don't call it that. This is just stuff that I use. And these two here. This is a Leatherman Wave that my father got me when I was in the fire academy. When I was in college, I was in the fire academy at the same time. You can see here, I've had this for probably 12 years, 10, no, longer than that, like 15 years. You can see here, it's got little dents and stuff on it, because this will loosen up. These will loosen up, and it kind of spins around like a butterfly knife, like the gangsters do in the movies. And you gotta tighten it up by hitting it with a punch. And for years, I didn't have this. This is like an extra thing that you buy for like $4 or $5. This pocket clip. And for years, I didn't have it. I wore it in a belt, a leather belt holster thing, like that. Like I got the buck knife in. But when I started wearing a tool belt all the time, I needed to get this off of my belt because the tool belt was pulling it down, and I don't even wear belts anymore. But I bought this for like $4 or $5, and it's really nice. It keeps it out of the way, and you'd think it'd be heavy, but for some reason it's not. But I mean, it's got a serrated blade. It's got I mean, you guys know what Leatherman are, but this is the one that I have. I've had this forever. I've had this forever. You can see it's I before I knew how to sharpen knives, I'd sharpen them with belt sanders and grinding wheels and stuff. I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned. I actually found, this is kind of cool. There's a car going by, a truck going by. I actually found, this was kind of cool. The file that it has, I mean, it's got this side that's like a file. And then this other side, let me see if I can get that so you can see it. This other side is a diamond file. And that actually, I sharpen knives with that, like when I got to clean up the edges and stuff, and it's useful for that purpose. It cleans them up, and it does a good job with it. There's also a little saw blade on here, and you know, you look at something like this, and you think, oh, there's not a lot I'm gonna do with that. But I tell you, when I was cutting lawns and there's like a branch in the way and you got to get under the tree or something, you pop this out and you cut it really quick. You can see there's sawdust on there. You can cut the branch really quick with it. Little branches. You're not cutting down trees with it. And what it's really good, I've found, is for cutting different types of siding. Like if you have to finish a cut, like the circular saw didn't go all the way through and it's just a little bit, and rather than going and running and getting your handsaw out of your truck or off the ladder or whatever, you pull this out of your pocket and it's gone. And yeah, it's a good little tool. It's got screwdrivers on it, a couple of different sizes. Opens up and it has the needle nose there, and you can see these have seen some days. When I get a tick on like one of the dogs or myself, I'll pull it off with these, and I'll burn them. I'll burn the tick as it's there to kill it, and so you can see it. Yeah, you can kind of see some black there. But it's got a flathead screwdriver. It's got a little pair of scissors. I didn't have a pair of trauma shears on me once when I was working on the ambulance. And if you can believe it, these silly little things actually cut some little kid's sweatshirt off. He got hit by a car in Chelsea, Mass, just up north of Boston. He lived. He did all right. I think he broke his leg, and he had some road rash, but he made it. This flathead screwdriver that's on here, you can see I primarily use that for opening paint cans, but it works. There's a little jeweler's screwdriver on there too that you can change. I'll show you the big one so you can see it. This this is a smaller one, but it's got a Phillips head on there, and you can pull it out, and you can actually turn it around. I'm trying to do this one-handed. And you can turn it around and put it back in there, and you get both bits that way. My father got me this, so I mean I know a lot of people know what these are, but I've had this forever. He bought me this when I was in the fire academy in Massachusetts. I was in their part-time fire academy, and he got me this, and you know, because I was using an original. I've still got his original one that he gave me, the little pocket survival tool, but this. I have used this on, this was on my belt on every single ambulance call, every single fire department call, every job I've ever had. This has either been in my pocket or on my belt, and I get up every day and it immediately goes into my pocket. It goes on, I got a little jar on a shelf in my room that I keep, you know, this, a pen, I keep that little screwdriver, I'll get to that. And it's just stuff that I throw in my pockets every day. This flashlight here, I have had this for probably 10 years. You can see it's a little beat up. This is the flashlight that I used on every ambulance call, every fire department call, every job that I've ever had. The oyster farm, everything. The ambulance, the oyster farm, everything. These two tools right here have always gone with me. This used to have a little holster that it went in, like a little sheath, and now it just goes in my left back pocket next to the, well, next to this. I always carry a bandana. You can see that's probably joint compound or caulk or something. But I always carry that because it's a nice rag to have. I'm always checking oil or wiping something off, and it's nice. I just like having a little rag like that in my pocket. And this is a good flashlight. It's you can see that's kind of bright, but what I like about it, and I've got other flashlights that I've acquired over the years. But what I like about this, and I drive my son crazy with this, he always hears me say this, a lot of these kind of flashlights, they have these things where, oh, push it twice and it blinks, and you can use it to signal space stations or something. I don't know, whatever the hell they want to do with it. But what I like about this is that I click it and it goes on. I click it and it goes off. There's no other weirdness. Like I had a flashlight once where you clicked it a couple of times and it started blinking SOS. I mean, what? I don't need that. That's silliness. I can do, if I need to, I can, you know, I can do SOS if I have to. I want it to turn on and turn off. That's all. That's what I want a flashlight to do, and this one does. I've had this thing forever. Yeah, I've had this forever, and you can see one of the ambulance services that I worked for. I won't get into which one, but I didn't like it there, and they didn't like me. But I had scratched my badge number into it when I worked there, and then I was so annoyed when I left, I scratched it out. But yeah, no, this is one of my favorite. This is my favorite flashlight. You can adjust it so it makes it bigger, and you can do like a finer one that goes further, and it goes that much farther. Yeah, this, like I said, this and the Leatherman were on my belt all the time on the ambulance, and they're in my pockets all the time now. When I was working for the oyster farm, under all of the gear that I had to wear, because we were in the water, we had to wear waders and foul weather gear and dry suits sometimes and that kind of stuff. I would keep this stuff in those two things. I keep those in one of the inner pockets of a sweatshirt that I wore all the time, a nice warm sweatshirt under my gear. And then I had this. This, you can see it, it's a buck knife. I don't know if you can see it, but this was always in my pocket. I would keep it in this leather case to keep it safe, but you can see here these little dents. I worked for an oyster farm that was also, there was a land farm component to it where they grew organic vegetables and different things for this restaurant in Rhode Island. That's, you know, that they're well known for this, but it's nothing I did. I just worked for the farms. But anyway, one of the farm trucks, it was snowing, and it wouldn't start. I mean, we were stuck out. We were stuck at the dock with the load of oysters and quahogs that we brought in, and we could not get this truck to start. So we popped the hood, and I was the oldest guy there by probably 10 years. These were all kids who were like college kids in their 20s. The joke I used to make is, oh, there's nothing but college kids and burnouts. And I mean, they were the college kids, and I was a burnout. But we couldn't get the truck started. So, all right, pop the hood. So I get out, and I'm looking at it, and I see there's all this crap on the battery terminal. And I don't have a brush or a cleaner or anything. So I take this, and I bang it on there like that. And I do it a couple of times, and then the truck starts, and they all thought I was a genius. And it's like, I really didn't think that would work, but it did. Every dog. So my father, this is a smaller buck knife than my father had. But my father had a leather case like this for his buck knife. I got that in the house. I'll show you that sometime. Every buck knife case we've ever had, has been chewed on by our Labrador retrievers. And this has been, when I went to go pick out my little dog, my baby black lab, I was wearing this, and she chewed on it. And when I first met my wife, I actually bought this when my wife and I were trying to go out to Nantucket, but we couldn't get there was a big blizzard coming, and we couldn't get out there. And so we stopped at an Army-Navy store in Hyannis, and I ended up buying this, and our chocolate lab chewed on it. So this has been chewed on by both of my dogs, and actually the sheath for my father's older buck knife from the 70s has also been chewed on now by all three of our dogs. The first lab that I ever had growing up, the lab that I have now, and the baby lab. She got a hold of it. It's not destroyed. I still wear it occasionally if I ever wear a belt. But this is not the big buck knife, the 110 that everybody uses. This, I like this. This is a 112. It's a little smaller, and you can see it fit. There was a book that I read years ago by Gary Paulson, the guy who wrote Hatchet, and it was called Woods Runner, and it was about this settler, this kid in the settling times, like the 1700s and the 1800s, and he met this Indian and a local, like a New England Native American Indian, and the kid gave him a knife, and he said, "This is my favorite knife because it feels like it feels like I'm shaking hands with an old friend." And that is this knife for me. I have popped open scallops with this. I have cleaned striper with this. I have cleaned all sorts of freshwater fish with this. Everything from bass and trout to what I call useless little sunfish, even though they do taste good. You fry them up and they taste good, bluegill and pumpkin seed. I got stuck on a Boy Scout campout. I got stuck in the bathroom, and I couldn't get the lock open. It was a camp out with my son. He's on his way to Eagle Scout. I didn't make it past Weeblo, but he's on his way to Eagle Scout. He's like two advancements away. But I got stuck in the bathroom and I couldn't get the lock open. So I took this knife and I beat the lock open with that. When I first got this knife, I was spray painting a John boat that I had got, and I used the tip of it to open up a can of paint thinner, the little metal foil that's in there, and I broke the tip of this thing off. Oh, and I was so upset by that, and I said, "Oh, I gotta call Buck Knives, and they'll they got all this stuff, the Leatherman, the flashlight, this knife, and even that, because that's a Craftsman. I only buy stuff that has lifetime warranty to it, because I know myself. I know I break things, and I don't want to have to buy it more than once. But anyway, I chipped the tip off of this thing, and I thought, oh, I gotta send this, I gotta send it in. Nope. I started looking around on YouTube. This was years ago, and you can see I got a serviceable tip on there. That does what I need it to. That pierces, you know, flesh for skinning game. I've skinned rabbits and squirrel, cleaned ducks. I've cleaned geese. A lot of different things, fish. A lot of different things. But anyway, so I had chipped that little tip off, and it was blunted. And I'm looking online, I'm like, how am I going to do this? I started, what I did was I sharpened both sides of it, and I kept trying to get it to come back. And that just didn't work. I found another guy on YouTube, and this was years ago, and I can't remember the guy's name, Cutlery something. So I'm not stealing this from him. But what you do, when you lose the tip, like that, you grind back here, and that brings the tip back. I didn't realize that, and Cutlery Lover, that was the guy's name, Cutlery Lover. He's like he was a bald guy with glasses, I think. But it was helpful. The only thing I would say, I did it with a grinding wheel. If you're gonna do it with a grinding wheel, turn the wheel on and let it build up speed, and then turn it off as it's coming down to speed. Just kind of, because you will burn that right off if you're not careful. Or I'd say maybe use a belt sander. Like I said, I used a grinding wheel, like a bench grinder, and that worked, but I had to be careful. This was initially pretty hard to sharpen, and then I started using that diamond file thing on the Leatherman, and that gave it the edge I wanted. Somebody's beeping their horn. I don't know why. That gave it the edge I wanted, and now I just clean it up with like a honing rod or you can use the unglazed edge of a coffee cup. I think that's kind of cool. I'll sit there and I'll hone it when I'm bored, and there's a lot of boredom now. But this knife is the knife that I like. Like, if I'm carrying both of these, I'm gonna do rougher work with this, with the blade on this. And I'm going to keep this for like the sharper stuff, like skinning and different things. Although I will say this, I've batoned with this, where you put it on like a piece of wood, like that, and then you hit it with a mallet or another piece of wood. I batoned with this. We went camping up in Acadia, and I forgot my axe. I forgot my hatchet. That's a funny story that I'll tell sometime, but I basically went from working 36 hours straight at the ambulance into driving 8 hours to go camping up in Acadia, and I forgot my axe, so I had to split kindling, and I did it with this little guy, and it actually worked. I'm sure if Buck Knives ever found out about that, they'd say, nope, that doesn't have a lifetime warranty anymore, but I doubt they're gonna watch this, so I'm not too worried. But yeah, that's the knife that I prefer, the Buck 112. I love that little knife, and I use it for everything. And finally, I actually used to carry that on the ambulance too. One of the places that I worked, we didn't wear, or one of the stations that I worked out of for the bigger agency that I worked for, if you were really in a busy area, you wore the police belt. But if you were in a slower area where, you know, you could relax and sit down, you wore like the Jake strap, they call it, like the radio strap. We call them man purses, but it's what the firefighters wear to keep their radios in. And I would keep this, if I can reach it, if I can get it, I would keep this on the radio strap itself. So I always had that knife with me, and these two were on my belt. And finally, this is not nearly as exciting as the other ones, I'm sure, for anybody, but it's a little pocket screwdriver, a mechanic's pocket screwdriver, and it came in a set of Craftsman screwdrivers that I got. And at the time, I didn't know much about mechanic work. I just bought it because I'm getting older. I'm getting out of high school. I need to buy tools. I didn't know why. I didn't know what I was doing. And this came with it, and it was in there, and it just kind of sat in a toolbox for years and years and years. And when I started doing more mechanic work, more work on my own cars and stuff, I realized how useful this thing is. I mean, just something as simple as I can't get the little bulb out of the cuff that it goes in, or the socket that it goes in for the headlights. Get that in there, it'll pop. There's a little clip, you just push and it'll do it. I also, when I'm working on, when I build tool sheds, I keep this in my shirt pocket because it's really nice for getting in there and clearing a jam and a nail gun. You can see I've even used it as a punch because a nail got all snaggled in the piston and I couldn't get it out. And I didn't, there was a time where my punch went missing for like 2 weeks and I didn't have it. So this was in my pocket. I took this out and I just kind of beat the piston down and pulled the nail out, and it worked. But I never really realized how useful something this simple could be. And you can see there's all sorts of stuff all over it because I use it for everything. I didn't realize how useful something simple like this could be. And yeah, this is something that I really use frequently. These are the three things that the three tools that I find most, you know, that aren't specialty tools, that are kind of for, you can use them for a lot of different things. These are the ones that I find most useful to me, and of course the stories behind them, that they mean a lot to me because of that. Like the knife, I bought that, like I said, when my wife and I got stuck and we couldn't get out to Nantucket. And the flashlight I actually bought, I was married before I met my wife, and the first woman that I was married to had she had different problems, mental problems and drug problems, and it was not a good relationship. I won't get into that, but when I finally she didn't like me spending money on anything for any purpose, and when I finally realized, okay, this marriage is ending, this is done, I said, you know what? I've been using a mini mag light, and it was back when they were the halogen ones, so it was the weak yellow light. I had been using that on the ambulance for years, and I said, you know what? Now I'm gonna get a good flashlight. So I bought this one, and that's why I always keep that one around. Obviously, the Leatherman, I said my father gave that to me when I was in the fire academy, and I've used that on every single job and call that I ever went on. And the screwdriver, that means a lot to me because I realize how useful it is. We were picking up a load of oysters on, there were two ponds, and they were connected by this little, what do you call it? A canal. There was a bridge over it and all that, and the restaurant was right there, and you had to go in between these two ponds all the time. And the foreman of the farm was doing something back at the engine of the boat, that it was an outboard with one of the things, that the tiller that you move like this, and somehow he broke the key off in the ignition, and he's sitting there, and it's like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, it's getting dark, it's starting to rain, and he's like, oh shoot, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna start the boat? The key's still in there. So he's calling the owner of the farm and all this, and I said, oh, just for the heck of it, why don't I try this? I took this and I put the tip in the ignition and turned it, and it started right up. It because the key was still in there. All the I guess the bumpers and the pins and everything were in the right spot, so that turned it. And from then on, I said, well, I don't want to do that with the knife every time. And I knew I had that screwdriver, so I started throwing that screwdriver in the stuff that I would take with me to the farm to be out on the water and everything. But yeah, these are the things that I get a lot of use out of. I don't carry them all the time. I'm not, walking around like I got my pockets full, but when I'm working, I'll carry the flashlight, the Leatherman, and the screwdriver. Now more so when I'm fishing hunting, doing that kind of stuff, out in the garden, whatever, I'll carry the buck knife there with the Leatherman. And yeah, they work for me. I hope you found this interesting. This is just something that I'm doing to keep myself busy while I can't do anything else. So I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope wherever you are, you're comfortable, and God is with you. Thank you.